What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Postgame and another win, Ethan. The first time in franchise history. Of course, I get a little something in my throat there. As right as I'm about to say that it's the first time in franchise history that the Spurs are 5-0. And just like Wemby, Ethan, when I
Mm.
heard that kind of going around social media today, I couldn't believe it. I feel like I should have known that, but just with all the Spurs' history of success, you would have thought they would have had a 5-0 start in their history.
Yeah, right. Like the winningest franchise in the 21st century, you think maybe start 5-0. But also, when you think about it, like regular season doesn't really, those kind of things haven't historically mattered to the Spurs either. So, I wouldn't be surprised if like there were a couple seasons in there, Jude, where we were 4-0 or 3-0, and then we immediately rested Tim Duncan, Tony, and Manu, right? I'm sure that happened at some point.
And that's what I was going to say. I'm sure we've had, some seasons where those guys have got some rest games early in the season, or they
Hmm.
just didn't play the first few games to start the year. Kind of like De'Aaron Fox and Jeremy Sohan and Kelly
Right.
Olynyk, who we still didn't see tonight, Ethan. We were expecting that at least maybe we could get, well, we for sure felt like Luke Cornett was going to come back because he was listed as day-to-day after he was listed as out earlier in the week for that game against the Raptors. But after he was updated to day, he ended up being downgraded to out right after that. So the Spurs were with the same roster tonight. And let me just go ahead and pull up this box score while we're talking about it here as we're about to jump into everything, man. But the other thing that I wanted to get into at the end of the game, there was definitely an outpour of emotion from Victor
Hmm.
Wembanyama. As you can kind of see a little bit of the picture there on the right side of the screen is him celebrating after he got fouled after some great effort from Devin Vassell there to force that second chance opportunity to get to Wemby to get. It was just 1 for 2 from the free throw line, but still that effectively is what won the game. But what I'm trying to get to here, Ethan, is that you could tell that the 5-0 start being a franchise record definitely meant a lot to Wemby because this was his biggest celebration so far of the season, and we have been at home since last Sunday. So it wasn't like this was the season opener, first time getting to see the fans either.
Yeah, for sure, it's meaningful. Like, I guess what separates traditional teams versus this one is that we were always pretty good, right? Even if we weren't starting 5-0, we knew we were going to win 50 games, right, Jude?
Right.
For Victor, first couple of years in the league, winning 2 games in a row was lucky, and to win 5 and to start the season in this way and go undefeated in the preseason as well, like absolutely a lot of meaning. And to do it against a team that's actually pretty good, like without Norman Powell, but this is a Miami Heat team. You can never count out Miami because of just how they play in their culture and their defensive mindset. So uh, to do it in the manner that we did tonight, obviously understand why it means so much to them.
Yeah, we just kind of saw that on the post game show after the game. So I had to kind of start off with that. But to get
Hmm.
into the game, Ethan, as much as we're very happy with the win, I'll be honest, this definitely was
Yeah,
probably the ugliest game of the season
for
and
sure.
the least favorable to watch. We were kind of texting about it. It really did kind of feel like it was even for like the first half. And then in the second half, it was basically just like back and forth runs. The Heat would go up by almost 10 and then the Spurs would come back. And then it felt like that happened 2 times in a row there in the second half. And then, of course, at the end of the third quarter, the Spurs went on that 13-0 run to really
Hmm.
go up to what it feels like, they were kind of going to seal the deal there. But of course, Miami came back once again in the fourth quarter. And then essentially, again, it ended with the same thing. The Spurs went on a big run, only ended up winning by 6. But, that was again because Bam Adebayo hit a 3 in the corner there that we kind of just left wide open because it seemed like the game was already over. So definitely a very back and forth game from both teams. But the other aspect of it is Miami is definitely the best team that we've played so far this year. What were your thoughts on the clunkiness as well as just the matchup of who we played?
Yeah, ugly game, but I think you can also kind of scratch it off as just like Miami. This is how they play, right? They're a gritty team. They get
Yeah.
up inside of you when they're defending. They clog the lane. They have 2 big guys, Khalil Ware and Bam Adebayo out there. And when you try and defend Bam Adebayo with Harrison Barnes, like that's not a recipe for success. Tonight would have been a really, really great time to have Jeremy Sohan and Luke Cornett out there to kind of combat some of that size. Poor Bismack again, another rough outing for him. Where it really would
Yeah.
have been nice to have him, but I agree with your overall take, Jude. In the first half, I think what kept Miami in the game, honestly, was Bam Adebayo for one, but then also just being laser hot from three, right? They cooled off in the second half, and it was a game of runs. And luckily, we were able to close the third and fourth quarter, like you were talking about, um, in a pretty impressive fashion. But yeah, Miami being hot in that first half really is what kept them in this game. Otherwise, I think the Spurs played pretty well, pretty under control. Um, Victor did a pretty good job in that second half, overcoming some adversity. Because I mean, he played well in that first half, Jude, but I still felt like Miami was being physical enough with him to give him some trouble. Um, but overall, not a pretty game. If you just look at the box score, maybe it doesn't tell the full story. I would still call this a positive performance for the Spurs, even though it wasn't a fun one to watch.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I kind of wanted to reiterate. And I think you made a great point about Miami. Like, they play tough, they play
Hmm.
physical, they make you play this way. Ironically, these two teams were averaging 121 and 131 points per game coming into this one. So this definitely kind of was, both of those two offensive firehouses turning into a little bit of a slugfest. You would have expected something different, but naturally you got the exact opposite. But you talked about the Heat culture that's been there for a long time. They definitely muddied things up. I felt like in the first half, especially, but even throughout the game at times, they threw some zone out there and stuff like
Hmm.
that. I felt like they did some good things on Wemby defensively, as much as, he still ended up with 27, 18, 6, 5 blocks, a
Hmm.
steal. But, you can see 10 for 23, 1 for 5 from
Hmm.
three. They were able to affect the efficiency a little bit, as much as he still, was able to get to the line, went 6 for 8 from there. I don't want to criticize anything he did tonight, but I do think that the Heat did some good things defensively there. And I also think just the intensity on their off ball movement that caught us in rotations at times. I don't think we've played a team that's had, as much intentional as well as intense off ball movement, whether that be Pell Larson. They'll even play Nikola Jovic off the ball. Obviously, Fontenecchio. I can't believe we haven't brought him up yet. I got to
Yeah.
mention him, dude. You talked about him, or you talked about the perimeter shooting and them getting us there. And this kind of ties into that. There were a lot of times that we were just late. I will admit it was a few times I saw Devin Vassell on Simone Fontenecchio. He ended up going 5 for 7 from the 3-point line with 18 points. Andrew Wiggins, 2 for 5 from three as well. Davion Mitchell was 3 for 4 from outside.
Hmm.
So there were definitely some, like I said, the off ball movement from the Heat. I don't think we've seen that quality in the rest of the teams we've played so far this year. So as much as we got also, it was an increase in the level of talent, and game plan, I feel like, as well. Now, obviously, that's only going to get harder moving forward. But again, Ethan, we've said this literally every game this year. But the other thing you got to remind yourself here, man, is we're down like 4 rotation players, at
Hmm.
least 3 rotation players in this game, and I think those guys would have helped out a lot and maybe led to a potential double-digit win. I'm not saying that's for sure, but I do think that even like a Luke Cornett in this game, just him, I think makes a huge difference.
I don't have the number in front of me, Jude, but yeah, I think offensive rebounding, extra possessions for Miami definitely played a contributing factor to this as well. I don't want to chalk it up to if we have Luke and Jeremy, it's a different story, but we won this game. I think we would have won it a little bit more comfortably had we had both of those guys, because it felt like to me, G, we were watching last year's team where it's like, man, as soon as Victor came off the
No.
bench, it was like we are completely outmatched in terms of size. Bam was getting the easiest baskets known to man. Cutters getting into the at the rim and just getting easy layups off the glass. Like they were beasting and feasting in terms of cutting offense when Victor wasn't on the floor.
Yeah, for sure. And just to clarify, when I was saying that there, I was talking about De'Aaron Fox too, not
Yeah,
just those two guys. We're talking about a potential double-digit performance. But even in that scenario, games are different. Every game is different. I'm sure that. And the other thing that I got to keep in mind too, no Norman Powell for the Heat. So
true.
definitely, when these two teams are fully matched up, I'm sure it would be an even matchup in a competitive game for sure. And always fun to see just like the Heat culture kind of go up against the Spurs culture. There's some differences, but some similarities in there for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. But when it comes to this game, I think when you look at that third quarter up there, 28-14 for San Antonio over the Heat, doubled them up on the score. And that, what really was the difference when you consider that Miami was almost able to win the fourth by 10 points. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up in that run, which, a big part of that lead was that 13-0 run late in the third quarter when it was really pretty much a slow offensive quarter up until really, late in the quarter, hence only 14 points from the Miami Heat. But one thing that I wrote down there, and we can kind of get into individual evaluations at this point, Keldon Johnson in that 13-0 run, Ethan, he had 7 of those points. Dylan Harper, he also turned up late in the third quarter. He had a really solid game tonight. 13 points, 5 for 10 from the field, 2 for 5 from three. Both of those threes, some catch and shoot jumpers, Ethan. I was thinking about our guy Lou when he made those, because I'm sure he's doing a post game right now for Miami Heat Beat. And I remember we talked to him, what do you think about Dylan Harper's catch and shoot shooting ability? Like, what's your evaluation with that? With Rutgers. And as much as, we had the 3 misses tonight, I think that he's definitely got some ability there. I remember he mentioned that stat. He was 50% on open threes, was 40% tonight on his threes. But I thought it was ironic that those 2 catch and shoot threes happened against the Heat, when he was the guy to kind of talk about that when we were talking about him and his evaluation. Because I think we've maybe seen 1 or 2 in there, but we've seen some other off the dribble ones. This was the first time we kind of saw him in not back-to-back possessions, but possessions that are similar in the time frame of the game, kind of hit those threes in the left corner. That was huge for us. But his energy in the third quarter as well in that run that really ended up, I feel like, is the difference in this game. You can really sum it down to that. As much as Miami came back and we had another run, that was huge in fueling that big third quarter win.
Yeah, I continue to be impressed with him. Obviously, I mean, when the ball is in his hands, I feel most comfortable right now with De'Aaron Fox not being here. You could maybe say the same for Stefon and Victor, obviously, but he has a certain aura about him, Jude. Dylan Harper, certain calmness
He
that,
does.
I mean, we've talked about it at length at this point, but you're right. When he came into the game in the third quarter, and honestly, late in the first quarter, he definitely calmed things down for our offensive unit. It is continuing to prove that he's going to be a floor general. Like 4 assists tonight. I think he really didn't even have an assist until that second half. But eventually he will be one of the best point guards in terms of passing the ball, I think, in the NBA. I think he has that kind of upside.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about his potential on Tuesday. I brought up the fact that I thought that was the first time I had the thought that he might be able to have the potential to be better than Cooper Flagg. But yeah, man, like you said, his orchestration, his passing ability, his vision. And like you said, he doesn't have to, be effective just driving to the rim with the ball in his hands all the time. We saw with the 3-point shooting tonight, that he can be effective off the ball, as well as just where he places himself and rebound chasing a little bit, or not rebound chasing. That's the wrong way to describe it, but just, positioning himself to fight for offensive boards when it's optimum, and there's already guys running back on defense as well. So lots of skills from Dylan Harper that we've seen in these first couple games. 11 points from Keldon. Like I said, the majority of those were in that third quarter run. That was huge. Good efficiency from him. Jordan McLaughlin, dude,
The
only
man.
6 points, 2 for 3 on those threes. But dude, those threes were important. Had a nice steal in there as well, where he just went and swiped it from a dude. I believe that was in the second quarter on an inbound, and that led to a Keldon easy layup. And that was kind of a point where Miami was kind of starting to build their lead, and that helped us cut back into it. What are your thoughts on the 11 minutes we saw from him and how he played tonight?
Yeah, dude, he's getting like these weird spot minutes. Like the rotation is actually working for Mitch. It's like a way to rest Dylan and Stefon at the same time, give Jordan McLaughlin these 11 minutes, but he's making the most of them. I think this is probably his first, like, the first game that he's had where it's actually jumped off the screen. Like typically he's just in there filling a role, right? Being a body on the floor. But his jump shot's nice, dude, and he understands how to play basketball. That's why he's on the team, is that we don't necessarily lose anything when we insert him into the lineup. He understands how to play basketball, and yeah, I like the way that Jordan is used. Good point. Yep. That's a good way to sum it up.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think he can set up an offensive set,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, because he has point guard reps. He's a floor spacer. He's not going to do too much.
Right.
Again, dude, this is why we were talking going into the season, not to beat a dead horse, but this is why we're happy to have guys like him and Bismack Biyombo in that third string position, so that when we're in a scenario that we're in tonight, a guy like him can come in and be effective and play competently. I mean, again, We've made this comparison 1,000 times, but the past 2 seasons, this would, instead of Jordan McLaughlin, it'd be Malachi Branham or Blake Wesley. And they
Right.
just, the experience there and IQ is just night and day.
Absolutely.
Getting into some other guys tonight, I think we got to talk about Devin Vassell as well. I know
Mm-hmm.
the efficiency wasn't that great, but 9 boards from Devin tonight. Love to see that. Had a nice block. I'm trying to remember exactly who that was on. Andrew Wiggins.
Andrew
That's
Wiggins.
who
Yep.
it was on that fadeaway there. So I mentioned there were a couple times I saw him getting beat. On the perimeter guarding Fontenecchio on rotations that led to a lot of those threes there. But I also saw him make some good defensive plays as well. But the other thing that our guy Yop Yop in the comments has been talking about a lot recently, and I feel like I saw this from Devin tonight, even in the inefficiency, is just the attention that he draws offensively. Like that opens things up for other guys, regardless of whether or not it's a perfect night for Devin. What he's shown throughout his career. And even on a night like this, he's keeping defenses honest to where they
Mm-hmm.
have to close out and worry about him. And then, of course, when we talk about the 2-point efficiency, I think that's a little bit better tonight overall as well when you take out 8 misses that were mainly threes, too. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing that when you look at the box score can kind of be a little bit misconstrued. But not saying it was a perfect game from Devin, but, dude, second most minutes on the team tonight. And considering the circumstances that we were under injury-wise, I think he did a pretty solid job, and he was a big reason. I think without him, we don't win tonight.
Absolutely. I mean, great defense, or I won't say great, good defense from Devin Vassell through the first 5 games, including tonight. The 9 rebounds were all really big, especially since we didn't have the size necessary on the bench unit. But I mean, the efficiency point is fair, and you're going to look at 4 for 12 from 3 and say, obviously, that's not great. But I still think that all of those shots were good shots. I don't think he was
Mm-hmm.
forcing anything bad. He was playing within the flow of the system. And Wembanyama needed some help in terms of shooting the ball, and he was absolutely willing to do that. Um, and each of his shots were very important. So I think this was a good game from Devin as well.
Yeah, but the second leading scorer on the team, Ethan, was Steph Castle.
Mm-hmm.
21 tonight, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 steals, reading those
Yep.
passing lanes a good bit. Not all of those were physical. I want to say 3 of those he literally just snatched, and it led to an easy transition layup. Had a block in there as well, an efficient shooting night, 2 for 4. That was another thing I was thinking about when he hit that late 3 that was kind of deep in the fourth quarter right next to the logo. I was thinking about Lou because that made him finish 2 for 4 on the shooting.
Mm.
And kind of just that was another topic of conversation when it came to his development over the summer. So as much as, still some work to do for Steph, that was kind of an example of how in the clutch, he can hit shots like that. Excuse me there. Almost,
You almost cursed there,
I
Jude.
almost said something else. Yeah. But 7 for 12 overall, man. And again, getting to the line, 5 for 7, getting trips over there, obviously still would, I don't know, 5 for 7 with what we've seen from Steph shooting. I'm totally good with that. I look at the percentage, I see 71, and in my head, I'm like, I'd like that to be a little better. But I got to also remind myself who Steph is. I think this was a very solid
Mm-hmm.
game from Stefon Castle. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I would agree with that. I think playmaking was much improved versus the first 4 games. 2 turnovers, Jude, which obviously we want that to be 0, but compared to his other games, that's an improvement. And it was the 4 steals for me, Jude, that really put the cherry on top, like you were talking about. Defensively, just continuing to be a menace. Doesn't matter if he's guarding someone 6'1" like Davion Mitchell or 6'8" like Andrew Wiggins. He's still giving the same physicality and intensity, which I love.
Yeah, 100%. Not too much for me on Bismack in this one tonight. He was literally just throw him out there for 7 minutes. So Wemby's eye, that was kind of
Pretty
how I
much.
looked at that one. But let's talk about Harrison Barnes and Julian Champagny as well. Not the most efficient nights for them. With Harrison, I think that the shots that he did make in the clutch were huge.
Huge.
But here's the other thing, even on a really rough shooting night for Champagny, and I saw in the comments earlier, somebody said they're done with Champagny, but had 5 boards, man, and 2 steals and a block as well. So definitely, we want Champagny to do his job, Ethan, but kind of the term that you've coined him in, and ironically, he's still plus 24 in the box
Mm-hmm.
score. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think that is a testament to his defense. And I was going to say the comparison that you've made is Danny Green, dude. And I honestly think that as time is going on, that's only becoming more true.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hate to put it this way, Ethan, but he has some Danny Green nights. Like some nights he can't miss, and sometimes he can't make anything. Tonight
Mm-hmm.
was the latter, but still, you always have that consistent defense there.
Right. Yeah. I think we we may have a inflated memory of Danny Green, if I'm being honest with like obviously remember the 2013 playoffs, but he was a 3-and-D guy, but a lot of times he also had some inconsistent nights. I think the same is true for Julian, like you're saying. But I also wouldn't be surprised if come playoff time, because we will be in the playoffs, Julian Champagny also sets a record for most threes in a round series because he has that level uh, of what's the word I'm looking
Flamethrower.
for? Flamethrower ability. Yeah, he has that. He can flip a switch and just be on one time. But when he's not hitting his shots, he's not hitting his shots, and it is ugly to look at. But I think he does impact in other areas of the game, including defense.
Yeah, a lot of people in the comments are agreeing with that. Guadalupe Chavaria always in the comments. He says Spurs Dynasty 2.0. Masas 911 says, "Guys, are we good?" Right? After the past 4 years, that's definitely how we feel. And a lot of other stuff that I've been seeing in here, Ethan. More competitive game from JG. He also says thoughts on Carter getting 0 minutes. I've seen a couple people asking about Carter Bryant. What are your thoughts on Carter getting 0 minutes, Ethan?
Yeah, I honestly thought he might get some play, especially since we were kind of getting beaten on size in moments. I thought I might as well throw him out there to try and guard Bam Adebayo at moments because Harrison Barnes, as much as I love him and I think he's a really good perimeter defender, he wasn't cutting it if I'm being honest. So I thought maybe he'd get some spot minutes, but um, I don't know. Maybe I guess the coaches thought that he wasn't ready.
Yeah, I think honestly, we've seen this before with some rookies where we'll play them a couple games early in the
Hmm.
season and then we kind of transition them to moving into Austin. None of the guys that will potentially be playing in Austin, as you see down there, entered the game tonight. I'm hoping that that's an indication that next game we're going to get some people back, even if it's not, Jeremy and De'Aaron Fox, which was on the injury report. This Sunday will be November 2nd, so that day is coming up. To be honest with you, I don't think they're going to play, but I am holding out hope for a chance. I think definitely Luke Cornett. That's very reasonable. But Kelly Olynyk and Lindy Waters, like those are the three that I'm really kind of like keeping my eye on for this Sunday when we play the Suns.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that. Did you say you didn't think that De'Aaron Fox and Jeremy Sohan were going to play?
Yeah, I was saying I don't think I was saying that this is the day that they've been talked about,
Hmm.
November 2nd, that
Right.
they're supposed to play since the start of the season, but I'm saying I don't think that's going to be the case. But this all ties back to our guy Carter Bryant. And I was just saying I think that this could be an indication that we're kind of transitioning a lot of our two-way guys and
Hmm.
Carter to Austin if those guys are all about to be activated again and we'll have that depth on the bench.
Well, Jeremy Sohan better be playing against the Phoenix Suns, Jude, because I need to see the Jeremy versus Dylan Brooks tape again. That's what I've been looking forward to since the start of the year.
And then if we get that, we'll get that and Jeremy versus the Rockets in the same
Yes,
week. As much as
please.
no Dylan on the Rockets anymore, we'll still get both of those in the same week.
Yeah, need both of those fights to happen for sure.
But yeah, I think that would be my guess that they're transitioning the guys to Austin, or other some sort of matchup thing. Have we really ran a 9-man rotation yet this year, Ethan?
I think this might be the first time. I think we ran 10-man last game and like 11-man the game 3 games before, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe he just wanted to get us experience running a 9-man for like a playoff situation down the line, but who knows there. Also, maybe Carter has something, a little nagging injury that they didn't even list, and that's why they didn't play. I don't know. But
And let's be honest too. I guess like we needed some scoring in this game. Maybe he thought Carter's not at that level yet to really influence scoring, and if he does, it's just kind of happenstance. So let's put Julian and Harrison and the rest of the guys out there because at least we know that on paper, that they're better shooters at this point in their career.
yeah, and Matt Wilson says CB didn't even see the floor tonight. Not sure what you were talking about. Yeah, there was somebody earlier who was asking why he didn't see the floor. So that's where we're kind of talking a little bit about Carter Bryant. But any final thoughts on this game, man? I feel like as much as, this was a 2 hour, 2.5 hour circumstance of our life, I feel like
Hmm.
out of all the games this year, this is like the least I have to take away from, as much as it was the most competitive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess this might be a side effect of actually winning basketball games, Jude, is that there's less for us to diagnose and tear apart. You know what I mean? Which is a good thing, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah, if I had to pick like one other thing that I think the Spurs could get better at, moving
Hmm.
forward from this game from an analysis perspective, I would just say rotations. We're going to be playing, like, for example, when we play a team like the Warriors, or again, we're going to play the Rockets, but just teams with a lot of off ball movement. The Warriors are a better example. Is that Winky in the background?
Yeah, dude,
I
he's
was,
he's screaming.
I was just making sure I was hearing that correctly. But teams with a lot of off ball movement and shooters running around the floor, I felt like that was taken advantage of tonight by Miami, especially with Fontenecchio. So I think that's something that the Spurs could improve on moving forward. Turnovers offensively, maybe making smart passes, not wasting easy transition opportunities by trying
Mm.
to force things. And here's another thing. We talked about this last time, talking about De'Aaron Fox and potentially what he can bring. I'm excited to see him like just bring actual sets. I know we've seen a couple, we've seen Steph do that. I'm not saying Steph can't do that, but I think that's going to come more natural to De'Aaron. And obviously that's what the like actual team offense is going to be based around, since he's going to be the starter at point guard moving forward long term.
Yeah, I think the starting offense is going to look a whole lot different because right now, I mean,
Right.
like you're saying, we might run it through the post with Victor, but it's mostly just free form, pick and roll offense, handoff, 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 and then somebody drives and kicks. So it'll be interesting to see what De'Aaron's impact is for sure.
Yeah. Odd Psalm 8665 says we are still very mid at shooting free throws. I think that's another thing that
Good
we
point.
could get better at for sure. But we appreciate all 140 of you guys in here. We appreciate all the new subscribers and all of the support recently. Truly,
Hmm.
truly, truly, we're excited. We've been doing this throughout the entirety of the Spurs rebuild, and we're so excited to get out of that rebuild and move into some winning time. And we're so excited that we've been able to get some content out on this 5-0 start, which is the best in franchise history. Ethan, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Let's make it a 10-0, Jude. Let's double it.
Ooh, that might be asking a lot, but here's what I'll say, man. Let's get to let me see here. Let me look at the schedule. I want to get to Friday. I was trying to remember if there was a game in between the Suns and yeah, the Lakers. Oh man. Dude,
Mm,
if we could get to 8-0 with wins over Los Angeles and Houston in the same week. And then, like you said, Jeremy's old rival in Dylan Brooks in Phoenix, as well as Jalen Green. There's some old beef with him, too, with him being on the Rockets.
true
That would be
that.
very satisfying against all these teams, man.
We will just have to see, Jude. This will be an interesting 3-game stretch.
Yeah, I definitely think that it is going to continue to get even more competitive
Hmm.
this week. So I'm excited to see us tested, and I'm hopeful that we can get some more firepower to bring into those games too.
Yes, sir. Well said. Well said.
Alrighty, we appreciate you guys. If you guys enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button below. If you want to stay updated with the show, follow us on X or Twitter at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. You can also hit that notification bell. Go Spurs, go!